Hello and welcome to the first edition of National Focus for the year 2014. I'm your presenter Tarnia Green. Thank you so much for joining us and Happy New Year to all. Among the major developments, Dominica received 2.4 million euros under EU general budget support. Citizens called upon to be more responsible in curbing disasters, and government reveals the details of relief packages to those affected by the Christmas Eve trough system. Stay with me as I bring you the details of these and other developments right after the break.
If you can believe this,
come by my house and let me show you some movies.
Why can't you believe this? Some mothers don't believe their own children when they say they've been sexually abused, and they don't report it. Remember, if anyone asks to see or touch their private parts, touches them inappropriately, shows them or forces them to touch one's private parts, has sex with them, shows them pornographic material, or deliberately lets them hear or see the act of sex, then it is sexual abuse. Believe your child and report the sexual abuse. For more information about child abuse, contact these agencies.
Welcome back. Time now for the details of the news. The government of Dominica has received the second fixed tranche of funds under an 8.46 million euro financing agreement between Dominica and the European Union. On Tuesday, December 31, 2013, Dominica received 2.4 million euros towards direct budgetary financing under the 10th European Development Fund Multi-Sector General Budget Support Program. As reported on Tuesday, November 19, 2013, the first fixed tranche of 3.2 million euros was disbursed in 2013 after the fulfillment of general conditions of satisfactory progress of the Growth and Social Protection Strategy, the GSPS. The GSPS is the main tool to foster economic development and poverty reduction in Dominica. The 10th EDF Multi-Sector Support Program is to support the implementation of the GSPS. The specific objectives aimed at supporting government to attain growth in the economy, which will generate jobs, reduce poverty, and improve the quality of life of all Dominicans. The second tranche of funds will go towards enhancing community tourism, reduction in prenatal mortality rates, training for geothermal energy production and management, and reduction in the frequency of water outages, thus reducing customer complaints. The financing agreement under the 10th EDF Multi-Sector General Budget Support Program was finalized and signed on August 29, 2012. The program specifically supports areas of economic development and the implementation of key sectoral strategies in tourism, renewable energy, poverty reduction, and social development. Attempts by the opposition to complicate voting eligibility requirements for Dominicans overseas have been dismissed as scare tactics by Acting Prime Minister Honorable Reginald Austrie. According to the government minister, that issue was already addressed in 2010 when the matter was thrown out of the High Court.
I see this article by Thompson Fontaine as one intended to scare overseas voters from coming down to say that they'll be partaking in illegal activities and they could be charged and they could be prosecuted. This is just a scare tactics and trying to prevent overseas voters who are appreciative of the development works that they have seen in this country, because every time they come down for Independence or Carnival, they say to you that what they hear on the radio is totally different from what they see. They can see genuine development, they can see true development. And it's unfortunate that having waged so much battles in the United States and overseas, trying to convince people that Dominica is not moving forward, and to see that these people overseas can come down and to see the level of development taking place, they're really trying to scaremonger these people and prevent them from exercising their democratic right.
GIS News spoke with Acting Chief Elections Officer Anita Rodney on Tuesday. Operating through the Electoral Commission, which governs all election affairs, Rodney began by explaining the production of the electors list.
Under this Act, you have the section 4.1, where it provides for persons to be registered on the electors list. When you're registered, that's the first criteria, then you're allowed to vote at the election. Section 4.2, it also states that if you're not on the electors list, you're not able to vote. Even though you have achieved the age of 18 and you're a citizen of Dominica and you have all the criteria for being registered and you're not registered, you're not able to vote.
According to the election official, Dominica's constitution dictates specific requirements for overseas voters.
The law provides that persons living overseas for 5 years and over should be removed from the list. But there is no system in place to actually account for persons living out of Dominica for over 5 years. So that is really the issue where it comes in, the persons come from overseas to vote. The law actually says that they're supposed to be removed, but the system is not there to remove persons on the list because you at the electoral office cannot determine who is actually out of Dominica for over 5 years. There are people that actually go overseas and they come in all the time. So that is the problem. We don't have a system in place to actually give you the information as to the persons that are out of state for over 5 years.
In the absence of such a system, Rodney is clear that voters named on the electors list are in fact eligible to vote.
Persons could be out of state and decide to come to vote, but the thing that if since you are on the registration list, you are on the list of electors, that is qualifying you to vote.
By way of summary, Acting Prime Minister Honorable Reginald Austrie reassures Dominicans, specifically those abroad, that those tactics being employed by the opposition should not succeed in deterring eligible voters.
The court has ruled that as long as your name continues to be on the voters list, you are eligible to cast your ballot for a party of your choice whenever that opportunity arises.
In more news, the promised relief packages to those affected by the Christmas Eve low-level trough system can expect the pick-up announcement soon after a cabinet subcommittee meets on Thursday. At a press conference on New Year's Eve, Acting Prime Minister Honorable Reginald Austrie appraised the nation of the details of these packages, which he insists is not compensation.
The Prime Minister, when he last spoke to the media, he promised that we would begin to make some relief payments. And I want to make the point that this is not compensation. There is no provision anywhere in the laws of Dominica that the government has to compensate residents for losses occurring as a result of a natural disaster. But as is customary and as this government has done consistently, we have always moved in to relieve the suffering and the pain of persons who are affected by natural disasters and other occurrences that were unexpected. And so we have taken up a deliberate position to offer some relief to those persons affected by the floods of Christmas Eve, December 24th.
Honorable Austrie revealed that the assessment reports have been received by government in time for the subcommittee meeting on January 2nd. An estimated $45 million will be needed for cleanup and restoration.
The number of households that were affected in that area was 18. We also have, I think, about 10 in the Roseau Valley. And damage means damage into the infrastructure, doors, windows, verandas, and it also means damage and loss of appliances and furniture.
The issuing strategy for the relief packages involves focusing on students first.
We decided that we would first of all have to deal with the number of school children who lost the books and the uniforms as a result of the floods. And we promised that those payments would be made towards the end of this week so the students can get ready for school when that reopens next week.
A payment strategy is also involved, and persons who assisted the cleanup efforts will receive remuneration for their service.
Just to reassure the victims of the flooding that the government is in fact keeping true to its promise and to make some relief payments available, I think it's 60% for loss of household items. I think it's 100% for damaged houses and 100% for school supplies, and to pay the regular and normal wage for the persons who are in fact involved in the cleanup, including the small truck owners who were very, very helpful in that period.
The acting Prime Minister sympathized with the islands of St. Lucia and St. Vincent, who were severely affected by the trough system. He pledged government's commitment to assist in any way possible. While raising the funds will prove challenging, it is necessary at this time, especially since changing weather patterns could play on the damage to worsen the situation. Meanwhile, the island's Public Works Minister, Honorable Rayburn Blackmore, has given the assurance that his ministry will embark on restorative work to damaged infrastructure as soon as technical designs are complete by his ministry. Persistent showers in the early hours of December 24, 2013 caused extensive damage to homes, businesses and public infrastructure in areas such as Newtown, Fortney, Casa Comfort, Soufriere, Beaubois, Point Michel and sections of the Roseau Valley. The minister told GIS News on Monday that government is looking to respond to this with the highest level of urgency. He said retaining walls will be installed and roads will be repaired in critical areas affected in the south.
There's another significant aspect going forward that we have to look at, and that is the restoration aspect of it, in terms of restoring some of the roadways that have been compromised insofar as safety is concerned. For matter of fact, in the Champagne, Point Michel area, the road there is significantly undermined, and of course, as a consequence, safety is compromised. In the valley area, more so Faucony and Beaubois, Fortney, a number of other places, and we have to ensure that we put in place proper mitigating factors going forward.
The minister says technical support from regional and international partners will be critical in getting the affected areas back to normal. He explained that the ministry is now in the process of finalizing plans to address those concerns.
Going forward, we are starting to put systems in place from the ministerial standpoint, and of course to ensure that we started the designing of some of the concrete walls, or river walls, that we may have to do. We have to move immediately to significantly rehabilitate the road, the Champagne area going to Soufriere, because that area there, I mean, the road has been almost restricted to a one-way. So we have to move in to do some slope stabilization and also to do some sea defense wall. And just before we take into Soufriere, we're also going to do some excavation, also to some stabilization to the slope to make the road safer for vehicular traffic flow and pedestrians alike. So, so that is what we have put in place so far. And we want to give the people of Dominica the assurance, especially persons in the new town, Beaubois, of course, Point Michel, and Faucony area, and the other pockets that have realized some destruction as a result, because the people who live up at the upper section of Beaubois also realized some damage to the road infrastructure.
A report from the Ministry of Public Works has suggested that the government will require $45 million towards rehabilitation and mitigation efforts following last week's trough system. And the Minister for Public Works, Honorable Rayburn Blackmore, is suggesting that simple preventable practices by citizens could determine the extent of damage done to property when natural disasters occur. The minister's comments came following major damage to home and road infrastructure last week in the Fortney and Beaubois communities, which according to him could have been lessened were it not for the bad environmental practices of some citizens. It is alleged that residents in Fortney and Beaubois cut trees and disposed of it in nearby ravines, which were eventually washed away onto land, causing significant damage to property following heavy rains last week.
As a consequence of some of our bad practices, more so in the Beaubois area, where persons went cutting logs and dumping them in the river, And one residence called on them to remove it, to remove them. They never did so. Now the state has to find money to protect those wonderful people in those areas who have been so affected. That we will do, but at the same time, it makes it easier for us as a people if we do what we're supposed to do.
The minister is therefore calling on all citizens to play their part in preventing similar situations in the future.
I believe going forward, we as a country have to ensure that it's in our interest to do things properly. And then we have a fundamental responsibility to be responsible for our actions. So if we cut logs, we cannot dump the logs next to a waterway, you know, and all those things that were done. And those things that, of course, facilitated that kind of occurrence. And dumping of fridges in a ravine cannot be an act of God, isn't that so? It's an act of man that has to be stopped, isn't that so? So whereas the government has to do its part, but we as Dominicans and as good people must play our part too.
And finally this news time, the second day of the year brought two new things to the island, beginning with a new cruise ship, the Costa Magica. The MV Costa Magica of the Costa Cruise Lines, based in Italy, made its inaugural call at the Woodbridge Bay, making it the second ship of that cruise line to add Dominica to its itinerary. While the Costa Mediterranean docked at the cruise ship berth on the bayfront, scores of passengers fresh from Tortola exited the Costa Magica. Stevenson Hyacinth, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, used the opportunity to appraise captain and crew of the touristic value of the island.
We regard this country as the most beautiful country in the world, and you can begin to experience the feel of this country. As you arrive, there was rain, now you look over there, you see sunshine. We also promote this country as offering the most culturally authentic product, and as a destination of such. We boast of the Montuapita National Park. It's one of our mountains that has a lot to offer. And if you look over there, you begin to see in the distance our mountain range. We also boast of our lakes, rivers, waterfalls. And we boast again of the most friendly people in the world. We are blessed with the opportunity to be able to speak two languages, English and also Creole, which is a patois similar to what is used in the French-speaking islands. And because you frequent these islands, we see Dominica as one of your favorite spots, or a spot that you should favor in terms of your visit.
Mr. Hyacinth said further that improvement suggestions are welcomed. He says although 2 calls were scheduled for this cruise season, those figures are not satisfying. An increase in calls by Costa Cruise Lines is the hope. This is what Chief Executive Officer of Dominica Air and Seaport Authority, Benoit Badwill, communicated to the captain and crew of Costa Magica.
We know that you have a mixture of guests, some of them from our sister French territories and some of your Italian crew. And we know that given the fact that Dominica is the nature island of the Caribbean, we would definitely have something to offer for all of the guests that you may have on board. And we feel delighted that they're able to be here. And I'm sure that based on the feedback coming from the passengers, that we will get increased visits from Costa. I know that Costa Magica is coming for another call this season, but we have much expectation as we continue to discuss with Costa to get increased calls to Dominica.
According to Director of Tourism Colin Piper, a significant number of passengers opted to enjoy the sights of the island, which could be a precursor to favorable reviews.
We were very encouraged to see a lot of your passengers disembarking and going out to investigate and to what there is to see in Dominica. A lot of them taking tours and a lot of them going into the city. We saw quite a few people taking tours.
As is customary, the ship's agent, H.H. Viwerchurch and Company Limited, and the ship's captain exchanged keepsakes.
Interestingly, it has all sorts of delightful things in there. Local products, soap made from coconut oil, rum, and all the rest of it. Interestingly also, the basket is made by the Kalinago people, that is the Carib people, and it is the weave type of basket is found only in Dominica. So if you see it anywhere else, it came from Dominica. And just to cement the relationship and to make sure you return, can I have your finger? I'll give it back to you, but just a bit. For some people it's a wife leader, for others it's a man's leader. And all you do is to squeeze it, pull it. Okay? Thank you.
Captain Alfredo Romano welcomed tourism stakeholders and the press aboard with a simple wish that the relationship will thrive in the long term.
We hope for next time we come with a Costa Magica more times. I am sure that our guests appreciate this call in Dominica.
During this cruise season, over 323,000 cruise ship visitors are expected from about 200 calls. That figure is over 110,000 more than the 2012-2013 cruise season. The next stop for the Costa Magica is Martinique until it returns to Dominica later this year. And that's all for National Focus. We apologize for not being able to bring you the Creole news. Coming up next, we will tell you how you should start afresh in your plans for the new year. That's coming up on today's tip of the day. Stay with us.
Do you have uncovered water storage drums around your home? Do you dispose of old tires, cans and old containers capable of holding water anywhere in your environment? Are you being bitten by mosquitoes, particularly at dusk and early morning? Do you keep houseplants in water? Do you spend your hard-earned cash to control mosquitoes? Has your community experienced dengue fever outbreaks? If your answer is yes to at least 3 questions above, you are at risk to dengue fever. Join the fight against dengue fever. The responsibility for a dengue-free Dominica lies with you. So, get rid of the Aedes aegypti mosquito.
A new year is always a great time to start fresh. It's also a time to reflect on the old year. What was your New Year's resolution for 2013? How well did you keep these commitments to yourself? Now is a good time to take stock of your failures and accomplishments before making plans for 2014. If you did not remain on track in 2013, don't be discouraged. It may not be easy, but it is possible to make resolutions that stick. For 2014, set yourself up for success. Set specific, realistic goals and make a plan to help yourself achieve them. And that's all for this edition of National Focus. We always welcome your suggestions and your comments. Drop us an email at gis@dominica.gov.dm or visit our website at news.gov.dm. Friend us on our Facebook page and be sure to like our GIS Dominica fan page. You can also catch up on past National Focus newscasts on our GIS Dominica YouTube channel. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm your presenter, Tarnia Green. Thank you so much for watching, and do remember to join us again tomorrow.